Miigwech Mishomis Giboase Driang Nungwa. Miigwech. Thank you, Grandfather, for shining on us today. Miigwech Nkidame Nungwa Gishiguk. Wewane Jinanu Gudawab Mong Gudwa Nuiji Bamadajik. Meanwhile, Wewane Gunun Nong Gidwa. Miigwech Gaye Shkukamukwe. Gimi Jean Minobamad Zawin. Miigwech Gimi Jean Mijum. Miigwech Gimi Jean Bish. Gimi Jean Wesiog. Meanwhile, Gimi Jean Nesewin. Sema in Bugadnana, Wabnung, Jawanung, Ebigishmuk, meanwhile, Giwanung, Nadamotionung, Jimshko Gabriong, meanwhile, Jazum Deyayong, Miigwech Nokamis, Miigwech Mishomis, Miigwech.
Bonjour Kenawea, Ogamakwe, Jacqueline French, Deshkan Ziibiing, Donjaba, Ajak Dodem. Ani, my name is Jacqueline French. I'm the chief of Chippewas of the Thames First Nation, and I come from the Crane clan. We invite you to enjoy this virtual event with us this year in the hope that next year we will see each other in person. This is the 6th year that Deshkan Ziibiing has observed September 30th, also known in the Indigenous community as Orange Shirt Day. To many outsider communities, this day is known as the Day of Truth and Reconciliation, but we have been observing this day long before it was ever declared as such. To us, this day has always been Orange Shirt Day, and the concept of Every Child Matters has always been front and center in our minds. We take this day to honor the children that never made it home from these institutions, which called themselves schools, and to recognize the families that have gone through the grief and the loss of the residential school system and the intergenerational trauma that came with it. The 7th generation concept is based on an Indigenous philosophy that the decisions we make today should result in a better world 7 generations into the future. This is something that we keep in mind as we move forward in this investigation. It is our guiding principle. How will the work we do today help break the cycles of intergenerational trauma left behind by these colonial systems and lay the groundwork for a positive impact on the communities of the next 7 generations? Chimigwech for joining us today for this video. My hope is that you can take the learnings from today's speakers who have volunteered their voices to share with you, to educate you, and to inform you about why every child matters.
Anish Bojo, Gina Megaki, Dishnika, Deshkan Ziibiing Donjaba. And I'm here today to talk about Phyllis' story regarding the orange shirt story. For over 165 years, there were 130 residential schools with more than 150,000 Indigenous children attending. The goal of the government and the churches was to take the Indian out of the child and to force assimilation. This has created damage and intergenerational trauma for many Indigenous people to this day. Many lost and stolen stories and stories that could not be told are still happening today. It was Phyllis Webstad, who was the creator of the Orange Shirt Day, that started a grassroots movement which turned global to commemorate the residential school experience and to honor survivals. Phyllis was born on Dog Creek Reserve in William Lake, British Columbia. She is from the Shwa First Nation. When she was little, she lived with her grandmother, who prepared her for her first day of school in 1973 by taking her shopping for a new outfit. Phyllis carefully picked out an orange shirt that was bright, exciting, and reflected her feelings about going to a new school. But when she arrived at the St. Joseph Mission Residential School, her emotions changed quickly to tear when her orange shirt was taken away from her. She felt that her orange shirt was like a piece from home, a piece of her heart, and the life she knew being home with her grandmother. This would be the first of many atrocities and trauma she would experience from the residential school during her year from her home. As time passed and the government acknowledging the harm and damage caused by residential schools, and many residential stories now being told, Phyllis had the opportunity to share her story to the world. Her story reverberated how everyone who went to residential school had lost their clothes on the first day of school. So she thought to herself and said, "There is a pink day to take a stand against bullying. Then why don't we have an orange shirt day?" So this is how her vision came to light. Over the next few days, she met with other school officials and First Nation reps and others to hold an Orange Shirt Day on September 30th in the BC area. The planning committee chose September because that's when children went back to school, and that is when the children's were taken away. When we chose Every Child Matter, it was when she talked about how she felt that she didn't matter when she was in residential school. No matter how much I cried, nobody cared. Nobody. We weren't hugged. We weren't consoled. We could be half dead, and we weren't attended to, she said. She further indicated every child that went to residential school, well, they all matter. Even the ones that didn't come home, they matter. And it wasn't until after that she realized using the slogan that fits the past, the present, and the future. In April, the ideal of the Orange Shirt Day was presented at a PD Day where she was approached to help make an Orange Shirt Day global. 5 months later, she was given a brightly colored orange flyer that indicated Orange Shirt Day was on September 30th, and to wear an orange shirt to honor the children who survived the residential schools, and to remember those who didn't. This flyer was done by Shannon Bell. Shannon Bell made it global. It was put out on social media too, and then it just blew up. Since then, Phyllis' journey has taken her to speaking engagements, writing books, and heading up Orange Shirt Day Society for the St. Joseph Mission Residential School Survivor Committee. This is where she tells the story of her grandmother getting her bright and new orange shirt and about her first experience at residential school. There are some books that Phyllis has created since then. Some of the books she created was The Phyllis Orange Shirt, The Orange Shirt Story, and With Our Orange Hearts. And today I brought her newest book, With Our Orange Heart. And I just wanted to read through this story with you. Orange Shirt Day is a special day. Wear one and unite together. I, Phyllis, share my story true about my orange shirt that once was new. My orange shirt was taken away at a lonely place where I had to stay. This made me cry and feel very sad, missing my family and the orange shirt I had. Sharing my orange shirt story and how it made me feel helped me to know that I could heal. My feelings matters just like yours do. Share your orange shirt story about your feelings too. Today we wear orange shirt to honor and to be together as one human family. I have hope for true reconciliation. Help spread orange from nation to nation. Every child matters, including you and me. With our orange hearts, we walk in harmony. Every child matters.
Ani, my name is Danielle Grosbeck, and I'm the Social Services Director for Chippewa the Thames. I want to welcome you to our 6th annual Orange Shirt Day event. Unfortunately, we needed to move to a virtual event again this year due to a recent increase in the COVID-19 cases in the community. This decision was made to keep our community members safe. I wanted to say Chi Miigwech to everyone who made this virtual event possible. The residential schools had devastating effects on every First Nation community. Our children were forcefully taken away from their families from a young age. They were subjected to physical, emotional, sexual, and spiritual abuse during their time at these schools. Some of our children survived the abuse, but they were forever changed. Some of our children never made it home, and are still searching for them. Our nation, Chippewa the Thames, had a residential school located here called the Mount Elgin Industrial School. Currently, the only original structure left on the site is one of the barns, which our Language, Culture, and Heritage Department is fundraising to save. As a result of having a residential school located on our nation, our community has experienced severe trauma, and its everlasting, devastating effects are still present today. Although residential schools are now closed, their effects remain ongoing for survivors and their descendants who now share in the intergenerational trauma. Currently, we are dealing with a loss of our culture, language, and traditional teachings. Residential schools heavily contributed to the social, educational, financial, and health discrepancies between Indigenous peoples and the rest of the Canadian society. Statistics show that Indigenous people have an overrepresentation in many systems, such as the child welfare and criminal justice systems. Since Orange Shirt Day was established, there has been many positive things that have happened. In 2017, we hosted our first annual event to honor past and current residential school survivors. This event was held at the monument that was built on the site where Mount Elgin was located. The monument has 7 pillars, one for each of the Anishinaabe 7 grandfather teachings. Each stone pillar contains the name of children who attended the school. With each passing year, we hold an annual event at the monument to remember and acknowledge the past and current survivors, as well as those children who never made it home. Orange Shirt Day provided an avenue to promote healing within our community and create a united front to ensure that past and current survivors, as well as those children who never made it home, are never forgotten, because every child matters. Another positive outcome from Orange Shirt Day is we now have the ability to educate the non-Indigenous community about the history and legacy of the residential schools. This has created great alliances with the non-Indigenous population that will assist in keeping this important message to the forefront. We can work together to ensure this travesty is never forgotten and will never happen again. We are hopeful that we can host an in-person event next year and look forward to seeing everyone there. Miigwech, and have a great day.
Good day. My name is Kelly Riley. I work for Chippewa the Thames First Nation, Deshkan Ziibiing. I'm the director of the Treaty Lands and Environment Department. I'm giving a bit of an update in terms of our investigation into the burial sites associated with the former residential school called Mount Elgin Institute. Mount Elgin Institute is one of the 2 oldest residential schools in Canada. It was built in 1850 and stopped its operations in 1946. The school, during its lifetime, drew students from 22 First Nations across primarily southwestern Ontario. And the peak year was in 1924 when 169 students attended the Institute. I pause for a moment and I think it's probably inaccurate to call it a school, as it's more of a forced child labor camp. At first, the school was funded by financial contributions from 4 First Nations. During the 1880s, money was removed from the Chippewa trust accounts to fund the operation of the school without the consent or approval of Chippewa the Thames. During most years, the Institute was supported primarily by the produce that was grown and gathered and sold, including livestock. The bulk of the labor was done by the students. As an update, there are 2 tracks or paths that we were pursuing that we'd like to briefly explain. The first path consists of research, primarily archival, looking at very old letters, very old notes, looking at materials held at the Library and Archives Canada, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and the United Church of Canada. So far, we have had no difficulty in accessing records. They are really historic in nature. We've looked at approximately 5,000 pieces of paper, and as an update, we've identified the names of approximately 900 students that attended Mount Elgin Institute and 300 associated people, such as teachers, farmers, helpers, and whatnot. We suspect approximately 12 to 1,300 students attended Mount Elgin Institute. The second path, and these paths right now are parallel, consists of the use of non-intrusive technology to identify potential burial sites. Our team is using high-resolution photography called LiDAR, which uses lasers to create a detailed image of the ground. The LiDAR unit is mounted onto drones, and the drone would fly a pattern over a field or an area. Another technology which uses multispectral imaging, which uses different wavelengths of light to collect data on potential sites. In the fullness of time, other technologies may be used, such as ground-penetrating radar and other technologies. This is a short update. I want to thank you for your time. Bumapi.
Ani, bonjour. My name is Nancy Delary. I am from the Chippewa-Thames First Nation. I work in the Anishinaabe-Adzuin Department as a Culture, Language, and Heritage Coordinator. The subjects that I'm going to speak about are the history of Mount Elgin, the two monuments that are built here on Chippewa, and our campaign to build a museum and interpretive center. Okay, first of all, the history of Mount Elgin. Mount Elgin was built in 1846, and it opened and operated for 100 years here on this land of Chippewa of the Thames First Nation. It closed in 1949, and Mount Elgin Indian Day School was open. The history of Mount Elgin can be learned by obtaining this booklet that we created this year, which is a brief history of Mount Elgin Indian Residential School. Our department did the research, and we compiled the information on Mount Elgin, and which includes accounts of the events that happened at Mount Elgin, and also accounts made by residential school survivors who attended the school. I'll speak more about this booklet at the end of my talk when I speak about the campaign. What I'll speak about now is about the two monuments that we built here on Chippewa. In 2011, I was appointed to work with my elders to make the plans and execute the erection of this monument and to unveil it in a gathering in the summer of 2012. For a year, I worked with and sat with my elders and learned a great deal about what they went through in residential school. I dedicated many hours and many of my time to learn about what happened at residential school, because I wanted to learn and know what happened to my grandmothers, who both lived here and most of their childhoods in this residential school. I remember when I was a child that I would ask them what their experience in school was. Just like I think any child who would be curious to know you know, what their loved ones went through in their time in school, thinking that it would be an awesome learning experience as education was for me at the time. But my grandmothers would just smile and tell me very little of their experience here at Mount Elgin. Both my grandmothers endured the breakdown of their families, and they lived in poverty, and oppression. This was all within the society that turned their back on my people, took their land, and subjugated them. This just did not happen in my grandmother's time, but this had happened for centuries on this land. We have to remember that residential school was a plan that our people took part in, thinking that the school would help us to be able to rebuild a new way of living on the land. For centuries, our people faced many hardships with the oncoming settlers to this land. There was removal of our people from the land. There were wars and there were massacres. And so that part of the history is what led to the time and era of the residential school system. The work that we are doing today is to remember and honor our ancestors and relatives of this land, to honor the residential school children for what they lived through, those who survived and grew up to become our parents, brothers and sisters, grandparents, and aunties and uncles. We now understand what happened to them, and we honor and love them very much. For the past 3 years, our Anishinaabe department has been working on a project that we named in the language Gawi Wika Ganindimisi, which translates to mean never ever forget me. This is a multifaceted project where we are trying to regain our knowledges on the skills that our people had in living on the land, along with language revitalization. And we are also campaigning to capture and save the last remaining building that is on this land of Mount Elgin. The last building that's on this land is a horse barn. And this is where the children were worked to maintain the horses for Mount Elgin in the time that the residential school operated. On the beams and on the bricks of this building are etchings of the children's names and statements that they inscribed about their time here in Mount Elgin. We want to capture this building in the best way that we can for our members, and we want to build a Mount Elgin museum. And we want to build space for an interpretive center. We get many, many requests for people wanting to take a tour and to learn about Mount Elgin and our experience here. And as of now, we have no facilities, we have no amenities to host anyone who comes here to hear our story. For the past 3 years, we've been hosting artist skill development classes. And it's within these classes that we are sharing the knowledges of our ancestors, knowledges of the land, and history and language. Another part to this project is that we want to host an art market in London and a benefit concert to raise funds so that we can do the work necessary to build this Mount Elgin Museum and Interpretive Center. On November 18th, 19th, and 20th of this year, we are going to host an Indigenous art market in London at the Western Fair Agroplex. And we are also in that same space going to have a fundraising benefit concert. To learn more about this project that we have of our artist skill development classes and our Indigenous art market and concert that we are having, visit our website, chippewaorangeshirtday.com. You can make a donation to our cause, and we can send you a copy of our brief history of Mount Elgin with your donation. Chi miigwech.